welcome back to ChatArgos, the weekly podcast of ChatArgos, the blockchain analytics data firm made famous for revealing that BUSD was under-collateralized by $1.4 billion. My name is Patrick Tan, the General Counsel. With me, as usual, every week is my CEO and Chief Data Scientist, Jonathan Reiter. Say hi to everybody, John.
Good afternoon.
And wherever you're tuning in to us from, thank you for joining the chat. This week we've got some stuff. We've always got stuff to talk to you about every week, simply because so much happens in this space. But we're going to just talk about a couple of things, just because there's so much ground to cover. This week we're going to talk about the DCG stuff. First of all, we're going to see what the Gemini overture to DCG, what's that all about. We'll talk a little bit about bridges. This is stuff that people don't really pay a lot of attention to, but they probably should.
And it was a bridge hack or supposed possible hack. Bridge
hack
this morning, last night. Yeah.
That's right. At the time of filming, it was just a couple hours ago. Some people not aware of it. Maybe we should talk about that. And then finally, in passing, some potential. We might just talk about TUSD a little bit in passing, but again, we don't want to spend too much time on that. So right off the bat, we saw an open letter again from the Winklevoss to Barry and friends, and at least from the looks of it, what they are asking for seems manifestly inadequate in relation to the value of the total claim. So I'm just wondering what's that all about?
Well, yeah, okay. So they want their money back. Yep. Fine, or the Gemini earned depositors' money and some other credit money. But it seems as though they're asking for that money to be paid out of future earnings from other subsidiaries of Digital Currency Group. So just to recap for people, Gemini earns money and a number of other, mostly retail and smaller fund sources of money were deposited with Genesis, the borrowing and lending trading arm of DCG. That went bankrupt. And most of the earnings at DCG come from a different subsidiary that runs the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, Ethereum Trust, that stuff. So at a sort of general, simple, consolidated level, DCG has money coming in from running the trusts and has a bankrupt subsidiary that owes a bunch of money from borrowing and lending activities. Money was lost in FTX and 3 Hours Capital and all kinds of stuff. They maybe can pay that money back with the earnings that come in from Grayscale. They don't have anywhere else to get the money from. In a very simple bankruptcy system, procedure, agreement, whatever, they would simply auction off Grayscale, take the cash, and pay back the loans. What the Winklevoss twins are asking for in what I believe they called their last and final offer, or best and final offer, something like that, was to be paid out over time from the earnings of Grayscale. So they want Digital Currency Group to commit to using the earnings of one subsidiary to pay back the debts of a different subsidiary. You're suggesting this is a bit weak. It does seem strange given that the parent company, Digital Currency Group, has defaulted on loans to the Genesis insolvent subsidiary. They could just put the parent company in bankruptcy and auction off this asset. People often say you want to avoid liquidations in insolvency and whatnot because businesses are worth more as going concerns, but no one's suggesting that Grayscale is going to go under, and it's not clear how the Digital Currency Group parent holding company matters as a going concern. If you have a retail-facing business, a trading firm, a supermarket, a boat fishing tour, whatever, tourist-facing thing, as a running business, it's worth more than selling off all the pieces. But if you have a parent company that owns a supermarket and a boat tour business and whatever, a medical supply, as long as those are still functioning businesses, liquidating the holdings of the parent company doesn't really cause any trouble. There's no massive synergies here. If you look at Digital Currency Group, there isn't a lot of business among the various businesses that's generating huge earnings. Grayscale makes all the money, and there's some other people who kind of use Genesis as a bit of a piggy bank, but beyond that, it's a place to deposit cash. Well, I don't see why they think this is any better. You're not avoiding any going concern issues by just putting them in insolvency and auctioning off their going concern subsidiaries. It does seem weak. I agree with that.
And the other thing is that DCG is kind of like, in essence, DCG is just a holding company.
They don't have any operations.
They don't have any operations. Yeah. It's not a business. So
and in fact, Barry Silbert's been very clear during these insolvency proceedings that they are a holding company with a small staff and all the subsidiaries are run at arm's length. Just liquidate the damn thing and move on. I don't understand. They're not even claiming that their management is their special sauce.
Correct, which is why I'm not convinced that an insolvency judge would even approve of this because usually, let's say, even if it's a wholly owned subsidiary, the debts of the subsidiary, live and die there at that level. It doesn't bleed in through to the parent company. Now, the difference in this case is, of course, because DCG, which is essentially just a holding company, owes a bunch of money to Genesis. So if you put DCG into insolvency, then you have to see what are the assets of DCG. And one of the assets of DCG is Grayscale. Now, if you wanted to litigate that, possibly expensive, which could perhaps explain why, because it's a touch and go kind of thing. You may not be able to get you may not be able to get a bankruptcy judge to say, hey, look, DCG is insolvent, and therefore the creditors, Genesis in liquidation, and the liquidators acting on behalf of Genesis would then go after DCG for any assets to satisfy the debt that DCG owes to Genesis, and part of the assets of DCG's bankruptcy estate would be the Grayscale product. But that's not a slam dunk.
Okay, so let me see if I get this argument correct. So I'm trying to summarize what you're saying because I had not thought of this before. The Winklevoss are saying, we know if we try to put your parent company in insolvency, you're going to cost us all a huge amount of money in lawyers' fees. Why don't you just promise to take money from one subsidiary and give it to this other subsidiary and save us all having to pay the lawyers all of this money? That might also explain why these letters were not necessarily written by those kinds of lawyers, because they would like that. Okay, I hadn't thought of that. I don't know how much money they're spending in lawyers' fees, because we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars a year here, and nobody's paying that much to lawyers. But okay, I can accept that maybe that's a reasonable strategy.
It may not just be the legal fees, but because you've got a couple of bankruptcies here. First, okay, Genesis is already gone. So now Genesis has to then take action against DCG, put it into liquidation, and then hope that DCG, the liquidator on the Genesis level will then go after DCG for the assets, and then DCG, which is now in liquidation, would then use whatever assets it had, which is the Grayscale product, to then discharge whatever it is, that debt. But in order to do that, how would you unlock the value of Grayscale? You either have to A, sell it off, or B, keep it running. Now, if you sell it off, that means somebody had to buy it, and who's going to pay 100 cents in the dollar for Grayscale at this point in time? The way Grayscale works is not...
Oh, well, sorry. If you can't sell Grayscale for the value of the whatever loans that have been defaulted on coming out of Genesis, then in some sense that means the money's already gone, right? Because if they owe $1 billion and they can only sell Grayscale for $500 million, these are made-up numbers, then the Genesis creditors are out 50% of their money, and this is just their refusal to accept that fact.
Which is one possibility, which is why I'm saying that this might be why they're doing what they're doing. Not necessarily just because of legal fees, which could be a consideration, but I actually think that everybody's in kind of a crappy position right now, and, trying to make the most out of a really bad situation anyway.
Okay, look, that's fair. So auctioning off Grayscale puts a price on Grayscale. If the creditors say our reserve price is $800 million, so that means they're going to put it out for auction, but if the bid doesn't come in at least whatever level, they'll just keep it themselves and collect that of earnings. Okay, and then if the auction comes in way, way below that, I guess they don't look very good. Yeah. Maybe people are trying to avoid having to recognize that mark-to-market loss.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because putting Grayscale out on sale is not a good idea right now.
Well, price discovery, you may not like what price you discover.
You may not like what you find out. Rather than risk that happening, because that's the natural progression of this case, Genesis goes after DCG, DCG has to liquidate, DCG has assets, it's Grayscale, the liquidator for DCG, in order to pay off the Genesis, that has to liquidate its Grayscale holdings.
Well, okay, so do you think this entire thing then on both sides is just an effort to generate as much time as possible, assuming that some cycle will begin, the price will go back up and everything will fix itself? Okay.
Yes, I'm almost certain that that's the case, because
there'll be a halving or whatever next year, and the problem will all solve itself.
The quickening, if you like, okay? So they all become immortal and stuff like that. So, for you Highlander fans out there. So, I mean, yeah, that's what I think that is, because really to reconcile all of the BS right now, it's not really favorable. These are not good conditions to reconcile right now.
Look, okay, I certainly don't think anyone's going to argue that now is not the best time to try to raise money for the sale of a Bitcoin non-ETF sort of a trust type business.
Yeah.
Fine. Okay. And I can see why they wouldn't want to come out and say, we don't expect to be able to realize the full value if we sell it today, so we'd rather just tie it up in some kind of process. And now their letter, their offer, whatever, did also indicate they were going to try and sue Barry personally. For me, they're clearly referring to the allegations, and in some cases stuff we've published that are not really allegations, they're filings by the companies themselves, that what looks like Barry took a bunch of personal financing out of some of this stuff and has been collecting dividends or earnings or whatever in large amounts through these things for a while and try to do clawbacks. I don't understand why they wouldn't want to pursue that under any circumstances. If here they were saying, we want to put you in insolvency, we want to auction the stuff off, and if that doesn't give us enough money, then we're going to go after you. But if it turns out we can sell Grayscale and pay off all your debts, we're good. Okay, I don't think that's insane, right? Because you do need the guy to agree with you to proceed.
Ideally, honestly, I mean...
Sorry, but I don't know why they wouldn't say, if it doesn't come in that high, we're suing you anyway. Why would you take that off the table? I just don't get that logic.
The thing about litigation, and I have some experience in this, if they had good legal representation on both sides who weren't really necessarily trying to just bilk them for fees, the best thing to do in circumstances like that is have their people reach out to their people and try to broker some kind of meeting and try to do this and arrange this kind of behind closed doors to come to some kind of amicable settlement. But to continue to do open letters like this, to continue to constantly shoot at each other across the bow, raise the skull and crossbones in open waters, it's not a good idea. And it's definitely
not... It's been 8 months?
It's
filed in December?
And
January? I don't remember.
It's the poor retail investors who invested in this Gemini Earn and stuff like that. Those are the ones who are really suffering. And I feel for them because they're just kind of like, pawns in this entire charade, and they're just, kind of being taken to the cleaners. And there's really not much they can do about it.
Oh, you mean the fee collection?
Yeah.
Oh, look, I mean, Silbert at least was an insolvency professional for a long time, so I don't think that he's being taken advantage of.
Oh no, not him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I don't know. It does not make sense to me why they're so afraid of pursuing him for money that he may or may not have taken out. I don't know what else is really going on here. To me, that says there's still more cockroaches to be found underneath this rock, but I'm not sure. They claim that their deadline is today, right? So they'll be filing U.S. time today, whatever, something. Presumably that's real, because I think in putting in boldface, final and best offer, we will sue you if you don't, and then not doing it kind of demonstrates the whole thing's a charade. Yeah. I don't think it's a charade. I think they're going to sue him. It is odd. It is odd, because a whole bunch of money was taken out of this thing and went somewhere, and at least have a go at the fraudulence conveyance claims and see if you can get anywhere. I don't get it.
Well, on that note, so we'll see. We'll find out today. Everything must go. Closing down sales. So that's it.
There is still more information within DCG about where some money went that still has not come out publicly yet. Not as large as the amounts that have been found and published at this point, but there are still interesting nuggets for people to find out about in there.
That's
for sure.
That's as much as we're going to say about that. All right. On to the next topic. So talk to us a little bit about bridges and what looked like a bridge hack, but we don't know for sure. We're still investigations, at least on our part, are still ongoing, but it looked as if something that looked at least had the flavor of a bridge hack happened today.
Okay, so a bridge is an interesting beast. So a blockchain bridge is a thing that issues tokens on a blockchain on one side and then collects assets of some sort on another side. So a stablecoin is a sort of bridge, right, where you're bridging bank account balances to tokens. There are also bridges between or among a group of blockchains. So it bridges between the ETH and Binance Smart Chain or whatever. You pick two chains. So this one can take tokens on one side, issue tokens back and forth. Each blockchain operates its own consensus mechanism. So there's some procedure for deciding the consensus of current network state. Okay. If you have independent consensus mechanisms, this is a stylistic description, not a technically precise one, you're not going to be able to merge them without some higher level consensus structure. So what you end up with is having to trust the thing that connects the two together. Fine. So that's what bridges are kind of in general, and it's been known for quite a few years in quite a few specific cases that you can't do this trustlessly. Right? So there are academic results regarding the lack of on-chain trustless escrow for off-chain assets. That's kind of a direct way of saying you can't do a stablecoin swap, dollar swap on-chain trustlessly. You need a provider, and there's no way to do completely trustless cross-chain communication. from different consensus domains. So we've known rigorous academic sense, not possible. Fine. People seem to believe it's somewhat possible. People make economic arguments we can go back to in a few minutes about how you might be able to do it. Okay, opposite direction. Bridges seem to get hacked all the time. Every large hack is a bridge hack, right? Constant 9-figure hacks of various bridges for years. So it's clear that this is a rich attack vector, and maybe people should accept that it can't be done trustlessly. Fine. Keys get compromised, bugs in code. This hack, and I'm going to put this in quotes, is very suspicious because it took place over many hours. There were very small transfers executed at first, then larger transfers, and things were sent to a completely fresh set of wallets. A number of tokens were hacked, some stablecoins, some wrapped Bitcoin, wrapped ETH, whatever type, major stuff, and some much more minor tokens. A token associated with Popsicle Finance was hacked.
Which bridge was this? Just so our viewers know.
So this is the Multichain. So there's a number of different chains. I think the Phantom one was mainly hacked, but then the old BSC bridge was hacked, and a bunch of parts of this thing were hacked. This is a conglomeration of bridges that connect a number of chains. So there were a lot of addresses and whatnot. It's mostly the activity on ETH where the hacking took place. The most assets are on ETH.
Yeah.
And most of these bridges exist to support taking assets off of ETH and putting them somewhere else. The Phantom connection and whatnot, usually that direction. So the most common situation for a bridge is you'll have, say, Phantom. So there's native tokens there that people want to trade on ETH, and then all the value otherwise is on ETH, so people end up bridging all kinds of other stuff back in that direction. So this is one of the larger projects there. Wormhole was another large example that got hacked, kind of doing a similar thing. Yeah, so lots of money got drained from this. In a weird way, over a weird schedule, the CEO of the project was disappeared or was arrested or something in China not that long ago. So it's been
arrested.
Was there confirmation of? Okay. So yeah, it's a suspicious situation overall. But hack inside job team. What I found most interesting, wrapped ETH, wrapped Bitcoin, major stablecoins, the Popsicle Finance tokens were burned almost immediately by the Popsicle Finance team. That suggests that they either immediately knew it was a hack and weren't even waiting for the official announcements out, the bridge running people about this, or it was an attempt like that they did it and they were trying to deflect responsibility. We have no idea whether or not that's true, but it's notable that none of the centralized stablecoins, Tether and USDC, were a meaningful amount hacked out here, have frozen the tokens yet, and Popsicle Finance just immediately said, straight to the burn address. A lot of people don't realize that for almost all tokens, the token contract controller can simply take your balance and burn it.
Yep.
That's a feature of lots of tokens, not just stablecoins, where they retain control. The argument is that it helps them to deal with hacking and theft in whatever situations. You have to trust the team, whatever. It's an interesting situation. But what kind of hack takes place over like 4 hours? $2, like the cost of a coffee, $2, were hacked out a couple times in different stablecoins. And then an hour and a half later, the guy comes back and takes $46 million. That's weird. It's definitely incredibly suspicious. But lots of these hacks are suspicious.
It's an unfolding situation, and you'll probably hear more about it in the news, crypto Twitter, and the rest of it in the coming hours and days and weeks, depending on which time this video gets broadcast. But it's
actually on that front, there was some research published on Twitter from a friend of the data analytics in the Twitter community of ours about the wrapped Bitcoin on the Tron network, and questions about whether or not those exist anywhere. So that's another bridge. It's the just whatever protocol bridge. Stuff gets bridged onto Tron. A lot of these, so the bridge that was hacked, we were just discussing a few minutes ago, you could at least see the on-chain balances most of the time.
Yeah.
Some of these bridges, in that case, these BTC on the Tron network, no one knows where the backing for that's supposed to sit. There is no Bitcoin wallet with a corresponding amount that's not labeled something else. No one knows. In fact, I took a little bit of a look this morning on that one. So the largest tagged wallets in Bitcoin are all Binance wallets, which is unsurprising. Then there's a couple of famous hack addresses. One or two that aren't labeled up in the top list, but they're generally not the right amount to be these backing tokens. And then Poloniex, which is the exchange that historically has supported Bitcoin on and off Tron and this wrapping, the balances in the tagged Poloniex wallets are nowhere near sufficient to cover this. So no one knows where they are. It's not like there's some massive Poloniex wrapped Bitcoin wallet on ETH that's covering them either. So look, the chain that had a dodgy possible hack this morning at least had transparent reserves. I think things are going to get worse from here as liquidity really starts to dry up and all of the empty holes are revealed. People discover lots of tokens they're holding are not what they think they are.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a hypothecation, right? So it's a bit like an ADR.
But I mean, it's like the counterfeit version of that. So ADRs are very...
It's a bootleg ADR.
But they totally... I mean, nobody does this really in regular finance, where you just
No, but they do it in the Chinatown in the city that you're in.
Well, I mean, there's bootlegging, right? But it's exactly the same as the BUSD of the Binance Peg tokens, whatever, where we got $100 here, and we're telling you we got $300, and you're trading tokens on the back of that. That is I don't know, counterfeiting or whatever. It's not great, and there are a lot of such gaps that are going to get marked out now that people want the money. It's going to be a problem. That's going to continue. This bridge was not, no allegation that it was actually insolvent prior to the money being stolen. I mean, what normally happens in a bridge is someone finds a way to trick it into giving you tokens without making a corresponding deposit. And then it's under collateralized. Whereas if you've just got 200,000, I think it's 125, whatever, thousand wrapped Bitcoin on the Tron network, and the only wallet we can find has 30,000 Bitcoin in it, you just out whatever, 100,000 Bitcoin.
Or it may never have existed to begin with.
Oh yeah, no, there's a reasonable chance.
Yeah.
It's just like, so Binance Peg tokens, we keep bringing this up only because it's the best known example. It's very easy to talk about.
It's good Harvard case study.
Whether or not they had the tokens in some exchange wallet or not, you can believe that they were making a good faith effort to make sure there was a deposit somewhere back in the emissions of these tokens.
You'd like to think so.
But mechanically, there's no reason they had to do that.
No.
Right? That's what it means to trust the bridge. If the bridge code isn't 100% on chain, right? There's usually something that lives off chain somewhere, whether that's within an exchange or within some routing protocol or whatever, some piece of software that lives off chain. That thing right there, it's not public, open, transparent blockchain style, and you can just change the code and have some tokens come out. That's a thing that you can do mechanically.
That a lot of people don't seem to appreciate, though. I don't think people who use these bridges.
Well, you can see the balances on chain. You can, but nobody's looking.
And even if you can see, and even if you are looking, it doesn't necessarily mean anything.
I mean, to be fair, at the time that I published, that Binance stuff, something of a following, and the action was taken reasonably quickly because it was egregious, huge, well-known party. If you're some random person that has no profile at all, and you're using a small project, small protocol, whatever, and it's a $27 million TVL, and you think it's out by $7 million, I don't think anybody's going to care. I now remember it's somebody, I forget your Twitter handle, I will DM you with an apology, and I get back to my computer and look, who was looking at this Kinesis Gold stuff, and their allegation was the Kinesis Gold isn't backed properly. It looked to me on a casual investigation that this person, this guy, this woman, whatever, was correct, because the documentation didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But it wasn't very large. I'm not an expert in that area, whatever. And they weren't getting, a tremendous amount of action. I guess I now owe you an attempt to help with that. Fine. It's tough. It's really tough. At least if you're defrauded by a large exchange, maybe you complain loudly and people care.
Well, I mean, there's more people, just simply because it's a function of how many people are making noise.
We talked about this on the Crypto Critics Corner podcast, but the reason that most custody providers in traditional finance are ginormous banks is because no matter how much money you've lost if they make a custody mistake, you're sure if you sue State Street or Bank of New York, they got enough money to make you whole. And that's the reason ultimately people use these large exchanges, because, it's probably okay, and some small exchange could just vanish, right?
Yep.
It's tough.
So
you have to trust somebody in bridging, and we're finding out that trust was misplaced.
It's meant to be a trustless system.
I mean, I have some sympathy for that. Look, multi-chain requires some degree of trust. There are people that have solutions for these problems, but they require bringing everything within one sort of trust hierarchical structure. You can't retrofit that. It's hard. Yeah.
Yep.
It's hard.
So on that note, last topic, TUSD. If you want to find out more about TUSD, Prime Trust, we spoke to Cass PNC and Bennett Tomlin at length about that on their Crypto Critics Corner. It's one of the latest podcasts. Go check it out on their channel if you want to find out more about TUSD and the Prime Trust collapse. But
my guess is every single one of our subscribers already watches that podcast.
Well,
but whatever.
I would like to think that's the case.
Right.
But nonetheless, if you missed it, go check it out. So, but let's just very quickly talk about TUSD First Digital because this is a sort of like an addendum to what we spoke about the last time, where we now know that First Digital, and then now they're coming out with a new stablecoin. And it looks like the actors are the same people.
Yeah, okay, so there's two sort of threads that we're going to pull together here. So one is in general the dynamics of the creation and destruction of minor stablecoins. Not the minting and burning of the tokens. The token itself comes into existence, runs for a while, disappears, and then in the specific case, this TUSD thing. So First Digital Trust, which is a Hong Kong-based trust company, was one of the larger providers for TUSD for a long time. They appear to no longer be a provider for TUSD, and they appear to be launching their own FDUSD, First Digital USD. Fine. That's, whatever. To the extent to which they were okay or not before, they're still the provider. It's then come out, some Twitter, whatever, investigator type stuff. Some of the people involved in that have a history of being involved in some not fantastic financial business arrangements and some stuff that's, I don't want to call it scammy, but like, as we were saying with Bennett and Kaz, the custody business is supposed to be incredibly boring, and you don't want the people who are behind your stablecoin operator to have a history of doing stuff that's at all messy, because the whole point is they have all the money and you want super, super, super calm. Yes, we'll see what goes on with that. First Digital has been confusing to people for a long time, and if they're now going to run their own stablecoin of which they have all of the custody, you are completely trusting First Digital. And all right, you just make sure you actually do your research on that one. There are no allegations that when the True Dollar was run by the original team and First Digital was one of their custodians, that there was anything wrong.
Yes.
We don't know that there wasn't anything wrong. I'm just saying, until this acquisition by this mysterious Tecteryx, everybody just thought TUSD was this boring, useless thing over in the corner. I found that there was a little bit of action there, but it still looked like they were probably real dollars. Now it's coming out that maybe a lot of the people involved may not be fantastic, and who knows what's really going on. And if FDUSD is going to be more like USDC or more like UST, we're going to find out soon. That connects to some research that we published recently regarding stablecoin dynamics overall. There's this feature for years where some stablecoin that now nobody's ever heard of, whatever. There was a Huobi dollar, the USDJ, VUSD, whatever, all kinds of stuff. People would come up, it would print a couple $100 million for a while and then just disappear. That's a weird feature of the stablecoin market, right? Other than whatever's going on with Paxos, Circle, and Tether, all of these other stablecoins have been, flash in the pan, disappear, ownership change, weird dynamics. Nothing's been around for really that long otherwise. TUSD's for a while, but it's changed ownership and is a fundamentally different product now.
To me, a lot of it resembles having a burner phone.
Yeah, look, that's...
You use it, make a couple of phone calls, your dealer, get rid of it.
It is certainly the idea that these smaller stablecoins come into existence or around for a while and then disappear is entirely consistent with their being used for interesting on-ramp and off-ramp activities and not for economic
and we've
type
seen
stuff.
Historically, a lot of these minor stablecoins have actually bled into the major stablecoins, and then after they disappear, which is why I'm of the view that they actually kind of resemble burner phones. Because you call your dealer, you make a couple of transactions, you get rid of the phone and the SIM card. I'm not suggesting this is how you operate, but this is...
No, but this is part of the plot of movies and whatever, where, like they go to find the bank in the Caribbean and, the bank burned down, or the address it's not there anymore, or whatever. Like, the whole thing was a shell company. One way to cover your tracks is to just shut down the operation. I don't know. I had always suspected, I think most people suspected, that these things were disappearing because one of their clients would do something bad, the bank would take away their banking, and then they just couldn't get new banking, and that was the end of them. Many crypto projects have said they have to basically shut down because they lost banking. If it turns out that a large fraction of the money they were processing wasn't okay to start with, then it was always inevitable they were going to lose banking. And if these people knew that, as soon as their bank account got pulled, they move on to the next project. I don't know in the case of this First Digital situation if these guys always knew this stuff was going to be a problem and planned to simply flip to the next stablecoin when that occurred, if this is reactive, if this is a surprise, if they had a dispute with the true dollar or whatever. We don't know yet, but we're eventually going to find out some of that. We do know that several stablecoins migrated away from Paxos as the provider, Wobi Dollar, for example, to this company called Stable Universal that was running some of this stuff. They may or may not be connected to the Terex people. There were some BVI sort of links maybe in there. And it does look a little bit like there's the same group moving from place to place as they lose banking. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong going on, but it does mean that there's weird dynamics here. And, look, Do Kwon famously, Terra Luna was not his first algorithmic stablecoin rodeo.
That's true.
If it turns out that a lot of these fully reserved custodial or whatever stablecoins, also people are on their fourth attempt and they keep losing banking, you start to have to question whether they ever expected to keep the banking in the first place or what the real business model was. Circle's bearing the brunt of that right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Circle now has a functioning product. They have a good product market fit as an off-ramp.
Which is...
that's not a sustainable business because once you've off-ramped and nobody on-ramps, you're gonna. I think Circle is discovering that their easy access to off-ramp, their product market fit is not consistent with a growing high-value business overall.
It's kind of via Condios.
The market cap goes only one way, whereas other stuff goes up, goes down, whatever moves around. I don't know. It's going to be challenging as that number starts to get lower and lower.
It's something that nobody's really watching though, and I think you really should watch. That the USD market cap, DC market cap keeps going down, because this should be concerning.
Yeah, so there is likely to be a point where the number is small enough that panic ensues.
Yeah.
So if you're pulling money out for USDC and you see the market cap go 50, 40, 30, 20, 15, 10, 5, at what point do you realize that door isn't going to work for you anymore? It's not going to hit zero, right? The panic's not at zero. I don't know. We're getting pretty close to a point where, people can still redeem BUSD. There isn't much USDP.
Yeah.
BUSD redemptions have eased off. But yeah, you draw a line on that USDC market cap and you see what date that points at. Something bad going to happen here. Right. Unless somebody starts pumping a bunch of money in there, which does not seem likely.
Seem likely. At least not in the immediate future.
Just to hold the market cap steady, you need to have significant inflows. Forget what the Matthew McConaughey pumping these numbers up. Right?
Yeah.
It's going to be real challenging.
So on that note, thank you for tuning in. We love it when you guys do that. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit us up in the comment section if there's something that you want us to talk about. Otherwise, follow us on socials. We really appreciate it when you do that. Until the next week then.
I was going to make one final little comment last bit there.
Yeah, okay.
So what you're seeing with USDC starts to have echoes of the 2007-2008 onset of the credit crisis,
that's right.
where you can see an amount of financing of some sort that has to come in, of funding that's needed. In that case, it was to roll a bunch of things, whatever.
And in this case, there isn't anybody.
Nobody was going to finance the roll either, right? So here, if nobody's going to finance these outflows, there's going to be an accident.
Yep.
And it's looking more and more like there's going to be an accident because none of these new stablecoin projects is getting that kind of money coming in. It's just not.
Yep.
Right.
So, and on that note, we'll see you next week. Thank you very much for tuning in. See you again.